You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the SheEO Lead-In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of SheEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights despite their sometimes rocky paths and found a way to lead in. So we have today with us Maria Stipp, the CEO of Stone Brewing. I'm sure everyone knows about Stone Brewing. They are an icon in the craft beer industry. And we're so excited to have you with us here today, Maria. And if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to be here and how long you've been with Stone Brewing too, because I think that's kind of an interesting story too.
Sure. Well, I started in craft beer about 6 years ago. I wasn't in beer at the time. I got a phone call to join the craft beer world through Lagunitas. So I was there for 5 years and then finished up, early summer and had planned. And that was, in 2020 when I thought, well, I'll just do some traveling. And boy, that didn't happen. As you can imagine, 2020 blew up and I found myself at home every day for 6, 7, 8 months. And then I got a phone call about Stone and the opportunity, and I thought it just sounded perfect for me. It was the exact right fit at the exact right time with 5 years of experience under my belt, so I felt like I had something to offer as well.
Well, and so can you share with us how long Stone Brewing has been around?
Oh, since 1996, founded by Greg Cook and Steve Wagner, and I'm proud to say we're actually just now moving into our new building with our increased space for Stone Distributing Company right there in San Marcos.
Wonderful. So you as a person, Maria, do you mind sharing a fun short story about your childhood that maybe people don't know about you?
Well, I had 2 brothers growing up, and my parents always lived out sort of in farm area of Iowa. And they were 8 and 12 years older than I was. So I found myself with a lot of time on my hands all by myself with not a lot of friends around. So forced me to use my imagination. But fortunately, I had access to a Honda 70 trail bike that I frequently would ride on through the fields of Iowa and have all of my imagination and adventures on my own. It was quite fun. And a lot of times my parents did not know where I was.
Oh my gosh.
Times
okay,
have
so
changed.
I was going to say they're definitely not helicopter parents then.
No helmet. Yeah, exactly right.
But what a fun adventure. Very different than what our kids are actually experiencing today. So talking about you as a person, what is one word that describes you, do you think?
I would say blessed.
Oh, wonderful. And how do you see yourself as blessed?
I just feel like, there's so many things in my life that have unfolded in ways that really have allowed me to be blessed, either in my professional life, in my personal life, with my kids, with all the relationships that I've formed over the years. I just feel very fortunate and very lucky to have been afforded all of those experiences. And honestly, I know that so many people aren't given those types of opportunities. And I'm more and more aware of that every day. So that's why I use that word.
Wonderful. So how do you measure success?
I think about it, in terms of am I enjoying what I'm doing? I always think about that, because when I'm not enjoying it, I think, is it worth it? Or am I in the wrong? Am I trying to do something that maybe isn't right for me? So I always try to make sure it checks a box of if it really is driving my imagination, and some of the things that I feel like I can bring to a job. And then also, does it support my family? Does it support the future that I want to create for myself and my family? And then I guess the other thing would be, am I learning something? Am I challenging myself to learn something more, that also I enjoy? So those are sort of the lenses that I think about success.
Well, and those are definitely some great things, and I think as women we have what we think a woman's life should be like in a career and all of that. And I think a lot of times we really have to think a little bit deeper than that. And for me, I am always trying to figure out, okay, I like you. I'm like, well, if I am I happy? And I always say that I'll do my current job as long as I'm happy and as long as I feel like I'm being effective. And if something changes, and I think there's more opportunity that didn't used to be open to people, and that is changing careers. Even if you're later in life, a lot of people are doing that now. I think it's very different than when our parents were kids. They were in one career and that was just it. They just never moved. But I think there's a lot of flexibility in that nowadays too. So I think, the opportunities are greater. And, you already switched gears. What were you in before craft brewery or craft
Yeah,
beer?
my career is funny. It's been sort of like in chunks of decades. I started my world in sort of the consumer packaged good industry with Kellogg's, and then Miller Brewing Company. So that was like my first 10. My second 10 was in the world of video games and technology. And then exactly. And then it just kept leaning more and more and more into more entrepreneurial roles. And so I've spent, my last 5 assignments have been working with founders, which has been really interesting. And so my last decade has really been working on a more entrepreneurial level, whether it was technology or now back into craft beer, which is a founder-led organization for the most part. A lot of those craft breweries, they're not more than 20, 25 years old, and they've got such rich founder histories, and I very much enjoy that.
One of the things that I just on a side note that I really appreciate about Stone is that the way that they really do look at the craft brewery industry, and that there's plenty of business for everyone. And, helping those others by distribution and all of those different things. I really, really think their leadership in that industry has been so substantial. And I think Stone Brewing is the largest craft brewery of all, right?
We're the ninth largest in the U.S. And remember, Stone was started in the days where there was just several hundred. Now there's over 8,400 breweries in the U.S. So, I mean, even when the time I started from 2015, there was about 3,200 craft breweries in the U.S. and now there's 84. So, it's just a substantial different landscape. But to say that Stone is in the top 10 even is really amazing, right? Because think of this, the sheer volume. It's pretty special.
Starting in Steve Wagner's garage. That's funny. Okay, so how do you look at failure, and have you ever failed at something where you think, okay, and I was actually talking to another guest, and she said, well, I look at failure as something that actually helps me learn something. And so there's like a success at the end of that. So if you could share maybe a failure, and if you happen to have, a success that stemmed from that, that would be great to hear about.
Yeah. Well, I do think I had this moment in my career where I took this job that was just too far outside of my skill set and my knowledge base. And, I was trying to make it work. And, sometimes you just have to be honest with yourself and say, first of all, do I even really want to do this? Or am I just trying to do it? And so that was a lesson for me. But then I think, pertinent to this conversation we're having, I found myself a different time in my career reporting to this man, this particular person who was not respectful in a way. It wasn't overt. It was somewhat subtle, but at the same time, I was not treated like my male counterparts, and I couldn't break through. I didn't know how to break through. I kept trying, and I was trying so hard, to find a way to have something in common, or to show my value, and I found myself working twice as hard as everyone else to try to, fit in at that table. And I realized, it was all for naught, right? That wasn't my problem at all.
Right.
And I had to recognize that that just wasn't an environment for me to be successful. And I think sometimes just recognizing that, and I'm, looking back, I'm almost embarrassed about how hard I was trying, that I would never do that anymore. But that is the lesson, right? That, you get that knowledge that you don't want to put yourself out in the world like that. Be yourself and do your role and do it well, and good things will happen.
Well, I think that is something that a lot of younger women really experience a lot. You want to try to overcome, and you think that it is your problem. However, you're right. I love what you said about that. It's not your problem. It was his problem. And so that is definitely a barrier sometimes in business, I think, in different careers. And, so talking about that a little bit, how do you deal with the resistance, or have you, when you're leading men?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have sometimes. I wouldn't say every time. In fact, actually, most of the time, it's worked out really well for me. I have had a couple of experiences for sure, and I think part of it was just around the perception of what these people might have seen about me. Maybe I looked too soft. Maybe I didn't appear to be in charge. Maybe because I wasn't a guy that somehow I wasn't going to have enough in common with them that we could work side by side. And so, or it was threatening in some way, like, oh, maybe she got the job because she's a female, and I'm going to do my part to make her look like she's not capable. That's happened before. Yeah, it's work environments, and that stuff goes on for sure. I've learned over the years to get some thick skin, not care what people say, maybe behind my back, and again, just really focus on being myself, my most authentic self to people that I work with, and contribute as much as possible to the end goal and the success of the company, and hope that along the way, the best people I can connect with that will support me.
Well, and that's, breaking the stereotypes, because sometimes you're right. You're sometimes perceived as too soft or too this or too that. And I don't know. I don't know about you, but I feel like too, as a woman, I'm pretty hard on myself. And I often say we're our own worst critics, because we are definitely always hard on ourselves. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? I mean, really, the stereotypes and being a critic. I mean,
Yeah, I remember getting this performance review. This is from the same person I was referring to before, about my leadership style, and I was getting criticized for my leadership style because it was perceived as not hard enough, right? In this way that he perceived leadership to be, because in his mind there was one version of it. And in my version, there's many versions of leadership. And I believe in, steward leadership, showing the way for your team to really be truly successful, blazing those trails and then getting out of their way, rather than constantly looking at the stick versus the carrot. And, we just couldn't agree. He didn't agree with my version of leadership. And I think, again, that is something we have to be self-aware enough to know that we shouldn't change our style. Our style is who we are. And of course, we always have ways we could do a better job, or we could be more clear with people, or we could set priorities in a more straightforward way. Potentially, I think all that's fair feedback. But I do think that we should all be proud of our styles, proud of our personalities, proud of how we come across. And not try to fit a mold we're not men. So, there's that.
Well, I too think that we'll be evolving most of the time. I mean, if in leadership, I do think it is an evolution, and it is different for different employees or people that you work with. Because if you're not being cognizant of what's happening around you, and you've got one style and that's it, I don't think you're going to connect with everyone. And really, I think as a leader, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's all about inspiring people to become the best employee and grow also. So if we're not growing, how can we possibly expect others to? And how do we help get them to be excited to come to work? Because I think when people are more passionate about what they're doing, they'll do a better job, and everyone around them is affected, right?
Well, I think everybody fundamentally wants to feel like they're contributing. And the only way you really can feel that is if someone senior to you is celebrating your contributions, or even just letting you contribute and getting out of your way so that you can actually develop on your own. And so to me, that's an important flex, I think, in leadership. And certainly, just as you said a minute ago, and that's a good point, we have to change gears depending on the situation. And I find women to be able to do that pretty well. I think we read audiences. I think we have a high EQ. I think we sense sensitivities in places, and we try to be as flexible as possible with how we communicate to each other and connect. I think that's an important part of leadership.
Definitely. So when you think about balancing things, because you mentioned earlier you do have children, and how do you balance it all between work and your private life and the kids and all of that? Are there any nuggets of wisdom that you have that have really helped you that you'd like to share with everyone out there?
Well, I first have to call myself out to say I'm not perfect. I don't know that there is such a thing as having it all. I think there's variations of not having anything and then being selfish and all of the things in between. I've learned a lot about balance, and a lot of the things I've learned probably the hard way, where I was too involved with my career, or I missed out on relationships and moments with my kids that I can't get back. So that's a lot of sacrifice. But I would say for me, the most important thing I've learned is how to be honest with myself about my boundaries. Like, what do I really need? Have that conversation with myself and really be upfront with myself about it. And then be able to set boundaries with the people that I work with and for, so that they can respect those boundaries. Because for so many years, I never set any boundaries. I did whatever it took, whenever it was during the day, whatever travel was needed, and I just did it. And I learned the hard way that you have to be able to stand up for yourself and say, you know what, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is what I can do, but these are the boundaries that I need for myself or my family.
And, talking about boundaries, I think that's an excellent topic, because I think that's something that we actually don't start out with. Because, again, we want to grow in our career. We need to learn things. And I think that's something that happens with time. And so, when you're speaking to young women that are, maybe just starting out in a career, I think, having, and we don't give ourselves very much grace, right? We're, again, back to our being our most critical selves on ourselves. We learn lessons, right? And so what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you would like to maybe share with some of our listeners that maybe they could apply in their lives as well?
As I said, I think part of it is being self-aware, really taking stock in what is important at the time. Now, everything, life evolves. In my 20s, certain things were important. In my 30s, different things were important. 40s were totally different. Pre-post kids, that was a night and day experience for me. And, it was a huge amount of learning about what balancing twins was going to look like. And so I feel like I've been there and done that several times in different stages of my life. And my boundaries have shifted and evolved as I've gotten older. But I would say to the younger people that are listening that, you really need to sit down and write out a list of the things that you really do want to draw a boundary around. It could be, and I remember having a conversation with a younger woman that worked for me one time, and she was struggling with balance. And I said, how about you don't have any meetings on Friday? Just block it out. Sometimes you're going to be with your kids. Sometimes you're going to drive them to school. Sometimes you'll have lunch with them. You might work all day on Friday, but you're not going to be having meetings. And she started crying. And I thought, well, I hope that I didn't offend her or I said something wrong. And she just said, I never gave myself the freedom to even think I could do something like that. And so I think part of this is us knowing we have a lot more voice and freedom than we give ourselves credit for. And part of the reason that maybe we seem, or I've seemed, I'll talk to myself, maybe a little soft, is that I haven't had enough boundary setting. And I need, always have needed to do a better job of that.
Well, and it's not easy. We all know that it's not easy. I always say sometimes, well, not always and sometimes, but sometimes I say to myself, okay, I'm not going to do this. I set a boundary and then I don't actually follow it. And I know that sounds terrible, but I found myself doing it. I'm sure you've probably done it once or twice and you look back and you go, darn it, I wish I would have done that. I mean, for me, it's more if I go out in public and I see someone and I told myself, oh, I'm just going to give them my card and say, follow up with me on Monday or whatever the next business day is. And I'd love to talk to you. But sometimes, I do find myself going, darn, I really missed the mark on that. So do you give yourself grace? Because I have a lot of grace for myself as well. Yeah. Even though I'm a critic of myself, I have to find that grace.
Well, I actually get pretty frustrated with myself because I overcommit. I'll say, okay, this is how, my boundaries, blah, blah, blah. And then of course, like you, I'll maybe meet someone and then I'll commit myself to an event, or I'll meet a different person and then I've got now this going on. And all of a sudden, all of that time, that precious amount of time that I was going to spend going for a walk or getting some exercise or doing something with my kids is gone because I did it. I'm the one that overcommitted. And so, look, there's pretty much having to show some grace for myself about every day. But I think, again, we are human and we know our weaknesses. Sometimes it's nice just to have talks like this because I'm already thinking about a couple of things and I need to back out on so that I can have my time back.
Well, time management is tough. Let's face it. No matter what you do, I don't know. I feel like during COVID too, my time management has been worse because I do try to fit more things in. And then I think, so yesterday I had my first in-person meeting, a major meeting. And I thought to myself, gosh, I'm having a hard time getting there on time. And because I had pushed so many things into yesterday that, I could just do 5 more email or I could do this. And so I don't know. I don't know about you, but time management, I think, has always been a struggle. I want to be more intentional about doing that and being better about my time management. I actually have a few things that I'm going to be working on this weekend that I know will change that. So do you ever, set these goals for yourself where you go, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and, that are going to help you actually manage your time better? I'm curious. I mean, I feel like that's something we need to constantly be doing.
Yes, we need to do it. And then we also need to make sure that the people that work for us have the freedom to do it too. So for example, I mean, I agree with you. All of these, this virtual work has doubled down my meeting management. I mean, I'm taking, it's every hour on the hour. I'm having a hard time having anything to eat or drink during the day because I'm sitting here going, minute to minute, which is ridiculous. This is not how we're supposed to be working. And yet, why are we doing that? Why don't we plan 30 minutes at least in the middle of each meeting to collect our thoughts, think about what the next agenda is, give ourselves time to have a break. And so I have consciously gone into my calendar and blocked time throughout the day to have 15 and 20 minutes here and there. And Friday after about 2 o'clock, I'm also blocking that out because there is no way that I can physically keep up with the sheer amount of emails and communication that I need at the end of the week without doing that. I find myself having to work all weekend, which once again, I've just stepped on myself because that should be time with my kids, my family, and for myself.
Well, and that's an excellent strategy because if you're not taking care of yourself, you actually are less effective, right? In the end, because you're more tired, you're more overwhelmed. And, I think that is definitely something that our listeners need to pay attention to. I would say that is a huge nugget of wisdom because if you're not doing your best, and again, I think exercise is probably one of my biggest issues. If I have to do it in my garage, I don't do it. I go, oh, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll wake up early tomorrow. I'll do it. But if I actually have to go somewhere and someone else is dependent on my presence, I feel like I will do it more. And I do.
Mhm.
And, I think, creating, and if you know yourself, I think you definitely know yourself. I think creating strategies that will actually push you to actually make that time for yourself is very important. I actually use that time as I'm driving to the gym to actually spend some time getting my alone time by myself. And I listen to podcasts and inspirational music, things like that. So I think that is a really big nugget of wisdom for people to
Oh, for
pay attention
sure.
to.
I mean, I have, deprioritized my own personal well-being for far too long. And I think, just making sure that I get some movement every day, whatever it is that I can try to do, I do it. And it doesn't always work out, to be totally honest. But, I try to think, okay, minimally 4 days a week, I need to do something for myself. If it's either a run or it's my Peloton, whatever I can fit in, it has to happen because it really is the time that I have the best ideas. I actually sometimes will run and think of things and have to put it into my phone so I won't forget it because, I do think when our brains are getting infused with oxygen and blood flow and all of a sudden we work better and we will be better at our job. So I have to make that much more of a priority.
100%. Okay, so when you think about all of that you've done and your journey, what are you most passionate about?
Making a difference, making a really positive difference. I think for me, I may not have answered it that way 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. But now these days, things, things change when you get older and you're a certain time in your career. I think a lot about talent coming up more so now than ever. I hire a lot of people far younger than me, and I try to think about ways to mentor them in some ways, and try to pull them along, give them experiences that they wouldn't normally get so that they can put those experiences down on paper someday and use that to get something new. Like I'm constantly thinking about what is it that I can do for my younger staff members to try to bring them along in the journey. I do think, that's the good news about being in a more of a leadership role is that it gives you a chance to reach out to others and bring them along with you.
You know, um, I think we're pretty close to the same age. I might be a little bit older, but when I look at our younger people, I think a lot of the social media and the telephone usage and all of that has really changed how they communicate with one another. So I really like that you're talking more about mentoring and talking and spending time together because these are strategies that I think are getting lost. You can't learn everything inside of a classroom or inside of a book. And hearing from people that are willing to share their treasure and their time with others, talking about this is what happened with me and this is where I fouled up and this is what actually led me to where I am. I think is really important. And I love that you're talking about that.
I mean, there's no substitute for observing human behavior.
For sure. And I think too, a lot of people feel unseen these days. And I think more now than ever because, we're masking up and when we're out in public. And I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying we're kind of losing our individualism in some ways. And as a leader, I think, talking to people and that making them feel like they're being seen and that they do matter and they all have a contribution, I think is something that could get lost if we don't continue to, really focus on that. Because let's face it, masks, we all look the same. We don't have, we're muffled. Our personalities don't come out the same way that they normally would. And, again, we're on Zoom all the time and it's not, I don't know, some people, I don't know about you, but I feel like, gosh, I can't really be my normal self because I just feel like I'm so muffled and I'm not the same and my personality doesn't come through in my, and I, you said something, a little bit earlier that I really want to touch on too, and that's authentic. I think authenticity is really important in leadership because, again, you're being true to yourself and you're using your particular style and you're, sharing that with others. So let me ask you something. When you're talking to the next generation of leaders, of women specifically, what would be some advice that you would give them? Is there any thing that you just go, wow, this is something I have to share?
Boy, there's so many. I learned a lot of lessons. One would be ask for help. Women, we have been trained not to, or at least we think we shouldn't because we might look like we don't know, or we're not ready for our job, or we're so conscious about looking, not as good as, or whatever is playing in our head. But I would say, raise your hand, ask questions, and say, I don't exactly, I'm having an issue either here in my life or here in my job. And you'd be surprised. And also, don't be afraid to ask people that you see as mentors. In fact, if anything, those are people you should reach out to first. I've been shocked, frankly, about, I don't think I've ever been turned down by anybody if I've just called and said, do you have 15 minutes? I'm dealing with something and you're an expert and I know you're really busy and you've got a big job, but I'd really like a minute. Nobody's turned me down. If anything, people have been overwhelmingly supportive of conversations like that. Number one, because it's somewhat disarming for them. Imagine someone's pointing at you saying, you look like you're an expert and you have something to tell me. And people are really willing to tell their stories. So I think number one, ask questions, ask questions and ask for help because we all need it. I'm sorry. None of us know everything. And so, that's one thing I've learned for sure. I mean, when I had twins, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, it was crazy what I was trying to figure out between working and taking care of them and everything that came with it. And I just finally had to raise my hand and say, help, reach out to my community of friends and family and get people to give me advice and show me how to do things and give their stories about how they balanced out because I was new to it.
I love that. The wisdom, asking for help. A lot of people won't do it. And unfortunately, they're not going to grow. And I'm a student. I tell people all the time, I will be learning things until the day I die because I want to grow. And you can't grow if you're not asking and learning. And again, asking people that could be potentially mentors, even if you don't think they're a mentor, they may end up being a mentor in some way, shape, or form.
And also, being really listening to the feedback. I got a coach at one point in my life, and you have to be careful what you ask for because you get a coach and you think, okay, this is going to be great for me. But if you get a really good one, they start telling you these things that are sometimes hard to hear, or you got to change a behavior, you got to change a mindset, and listen to that stuff because that's the really good stuff. That's the stuff that you want to write down, and you probably want to put on a sticky note for like 5 years. It'll keep coming up, and just remember, like, okay, I know I got to keep working on that.
Oh, that's really good advice. So what's next on your journey, Maria?
Man makes plans and God laughs. Every time I've tried to define what's next, I've been severely mistaken. So I don't know. I mean, I'm enjoying what I'm doing so much, and I'm really loving it. I love the people that I work with. I love being in craft beer. I mean, come on, couldn't be more fun and so full of experience. So I try not to think so much about that, to be honest. I try to think about, what am I doing today? Kind of, frankly, I spend way too much time trying to plan out and control my future. I'm one of my lessons, to be honest, from that coach was, you need to enjoy your day a little bit more. You are constantly trying to figure out the next 25. Why don't you just take today as it is, be in the moment, engage with the people that you're with. Don't think about tomorrow. It's too much.
Be present. What a great way to end this interview. Thank you so much. Be present in the moment. I love that. That's actually super good advice, and advice that I need to follow myself, because I'm not always good at that. So anyway, Maria, thank you so much for joining us today, and really appreciate you. And I'm excited to see what Stone's going to do next in the craft brew industry. You guys are doing some wonderful things over there, and really flipping the cans, turning the tables, doing lots of really wonderful things over there. So congratulations to you in such a wonderful organization. They really do a lot philanthropically as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with SheEO host, Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.